The priest spent the night here. What happened?
Nothing.
What'd you guys do for 12 hours? Play, Name That Pope?
The Sopranos ran for 86 episodes. But this episode, right here, effectively cements The Sopranos' primary themes of loyalty, duality, and duty versus family better than any other episode. And it is those themes on which the rest of the series is eventually built. This episode is important. HBO's groundbreaking mafia epic exploded onto home screens in 1999, and it paved the way for shows like Breaking Bad, Mad Men, Ozark, or really any other show that featured a family getting involved in high crimes and sitting down for dinner. Today there might be an oversaturation of television serials to the point of it being almost frustrating, as networks throw more and more money at every streaming service known to man. But in 1999, big-budget dramatic television series just weren't commonplace. One could probably argue that in the late 90s, serial television was a space almost exclusively reserved for soap operas, sitcoms, and science fiction. HBO had already built one hit with the prison drama Oz. However, as impactful and important as that show may have been, it was The Sopranos that changed the landscape of television permanently, as audiences tuned in week after week to watch Tony Soprano repeatedly put his family's life in danger over and over and over again. So that brings us back to here, Season 1, Episode 5, titled College. This shouldn't really come as a surprise to fans of the show. It won an Emmy for Outstanding Writing in a Drama Series, Time Magazine listed it as the best single episode of The Sopranos, and TV Guide listed it as the second greatest episode of television of all time, behind Seinfeld's The Contest, which I've talked about before, and it's for good reason. College is an episode of television that uses simplicity to its advantage and surrounds it with rich character development and pure intensity, effectively laying the foundation again for the next 81 episodes of the series. The goal of this episode is for us, the audience, to uncover a little bit more about Tony Soprano's duality leading up to the first time we see him kill a human being. The episode's through line consists of Tony chaperoning his daughter Meadow around New England as she applies to college. This, in theory, is a relatively simple activity that almost anyone entering adulthood can relate to. In fact, there's something almost mundane about this father and daughter exercise, but it's how we see Tony Soprano's existence in this extremely run-of-the-mill context that really draws us in. By centering the primary plot around something extremely normal, it allows the unusual fact that Tony is a capo and the DiMeo crime family to shine. Get to the car, and Tony is confronted by this blatant and jarring accusation from Meadow that she thinks he's in the mafia.
Are you in the mafia?
Am I in the what?
Whatever you want to call it. Organized crime.
So now we know that she knows what we know, meaning that Tony really isn't as good at hiding what he does as he thinks he is, and certainly isn't as good as we know he's not. If that's all confusing wordplay, that's okay. What it all essentially means is that we aren't the only people that see through the facade. If his teenage daughter can put the pieces together, then who else can, is the question that gets asked. Tony meets this with some rage and a half confession, which also shows us that Tony is willing to bend the truth to keep his family in the dark. The dishonesty nail gets hammered even further when Tony ends one phone conversation with his mistress and then immediately calls his wife, who is in bed. Tony plays his lie close to the chest, which gives us a sense of either recklessness or arrogance in the way he handles his personal relationships. It's another anchor point for the complicated and deeply flawed character that we've been introduced to over the last few episodes. But the catalyst for the remainder of the episode is introduced here, as Tony sees someone he recognizes and kind of flips out, putting his daughter's life in danger as he drives through oncoming traffic just to catch up with whoever this person is. Something is wrong here and we don't know what, but it's almost fun to watch Tony justifying his erratic behavior to his daughter.
What's going on?
Just fooling around.
It's a paper-thin effort to veil his intentions that seems to work. The constant gear switching between dangerous mafioso and family man is the driving force behind most of The Sopranos, frankly. But it's in this episode where a vast majority of that character dynamic is cemented. Even this scene with Tony getting off the phone with his soldier Chris is an example of how seamlessly Tony is able to switch gears between mobster and father.
Everything okay?
Yeah, they got a leak in the roof, though. Is that all right? Huh?
The backdrop of innocuous college visits is the perfect companion to this heightened intensity of chasing down the newly identified mafia rat, Fabian Petrulio. The B-plot is introduced with Carmela Soprano getting an evening visit from Father Phil. From there, over dinner with his daughter, Tony learns that she was taking amphetamines to keep up in school and was lying to him about it. There's a parallel here between Tony and his daughter in the sense that she has grown into a woman who was able to do something wrong and deceive him completely. It's essentially Tony's first taste of his own medicine on the show. It should also be noted how this is shot throughout the entire restaurant sequence. Half of Tony's face is in the shadows to the point of us barely being able to see it at all at times. Maybe the filmmaker's way of driving the point home that Tony Soprano has two sides to him. A balancing act that maybe isn't as light and dark as he'd hope it would be. And that at this moment, these two sides are coming together as Tony learns the location of Fabian. Back at home, there's some flirtatious behavior between Father Phil and Carmela, as she learns that Tony's therapist, Dr. Melfi, is a woman. This lays the foundation for another layer of distrust from Tony's wife and sets up one of the more complicated relationships in the show's run. Here, the pacing of the episode picks up as Tony hones in on Fabian. The lighting now has Tony in complete darkness as he stalks Fabian through his own backyard. We get this rhythm sequence where Fabian is trying to figure out who has tracked him down, as Tony's trying to figure out if Fabian really is the rat he's been looking for. We have this confession sequence where Carmela begins to confess her fears over her family's safety and punishment from the wrath of the Almighty, and just as Carmela reveals that she fears something terrible is going to happen,
I got a bad feeling. It's just a matter of time before God compensates me with outrage for my sins.
we get this amazing cutaway. As Fabian prepares to murder Tony Soprano at his hotel. But he doesn't. He has a crisis of faith. Carmela does too, as she almost becomes romantically involved with Father Phil, but chooses to remain loyal to the oath she took to her husband when she married him. Tony, on the other hand, only remains loyal to the oath he gave to the Mafia. He even goes so far as to outright say it here before he murders Fabian with his bare hands.
You took an oath, and you broke it.
The only one of them stepping over the line that's clearly been drawn by the writers. This is the first time we see Tony kill someone, and the decision to have him murder Fabian was actually quite controversial at the time. There was something really personal about the way this happens. Using strangulation as a means of execution isn't just brutal, it's extremely personal and intimate. Barbaric almost, and really shows us as viewers how monstrous Tony Soprano is capable of being. When this episode was in production, HBO executive Chris Albrecht was concerned that it was too early in the series for Tony to be brutally murdering people in cold blood, and pleaded with show's creator David Chase to change it. Chase went on to illustrate the point that if Tony didn't kill Fabian, then he was full of shit, and therefore the show was full of shit. The scene was left in. In one of the final images, we get this quote from Nathaniel Hawthorne that really sums up The Sopranos in 23 words. No man can wear one face to himself and another to the multitude without finally getting bewildered as to which may be true. This episode is the most important episode of the entire series in the sense that it serves as the bedrock for literally everything else that happens for the duration of the show's 7-year run. It might as well have in some ways been the show's true pilot thematically. It's almost hard to believe that one simple episode centered around something as normal as taking your child to apply for schools, or something as simple as having a friend over for a surprise dinner, can lay such a strong foundation. The themes of loyalty, duality, and duty versus family are expertly woven along something extremely run-of-the-mill, which should serve as a reminder to us that keeping things simple first allows us to earn the right to be complex and unique later on, which is something The Sopranos excelled at for the entirety of its run. Keep it simple, stupid is a good message in art in general, but even more so in writing. Nuance should surround and complicate simplicity. You shouldn't be looking for simplicity after you've complicated what you have in front of you. Well guys, that's it for today's episode. If you enjoyed this one, press the like button down below. If you haven't yet done so, also hit subscribe. On your screen right now should be 2 more episodes of Nerdstalgic, so you can click on either of those. And hopefully I'll see you guys in the next video.